Same thing with women. When I started dating, girls saw the man on the right, but in my mind I was still stuck being the boy on the left. There's only 3 years separating these two pictures, by the way. Hi folks, and welcome to part 2 of my transformation. I'm Uranus, and in part 1 I explain how I did not start puberty in my early teenage years like most humans do, but I only started puberty after I was 25 and on hormonal replacement therapy. So I actually lived with the body of a child until I was 25 years old. In part 2, I'll show you how HRT changed my body and my mind. I'll tell you how it actually feels like to go through puberty in your mid-20s and the problems I had to deal with being a bit of a late bloomer. I'll tell you what happens when you inject a huge amount of testosterone into a body that hasn't started adolescence yet. I'll go over the different treatments I've been on, what worked, what didn't work, how I was mistreated by some doctors, and how I was accused wrongly of taking steroids. I will also tell you what the actual cause of my problems are and how it all started. I'm 32 now, by the way, and I started hormonal replacement therapy 6 years ago. Regarding the thumbnail image, the one on the left was the first day I started HRT, and the one on the right is 5 years after HRT and lifting. So let's get to it. So after a lot of tests, my first endocrinologist sent me home with a ridiculous protocol of 300 milligrams of testosterone every 3 weeks, and he told me I couldn't have kids. He doesn't talk to me about any alternatives, he just tells me this is the protocol in our country, and since you'll be taking testosterone, you won't be able to have kids. So I pick up my prescription and I go to my local pharmacy to pick up my TRT. I didn't even think as far as how I would inject that into me, and I wasn't really in a good state because, a specialist just told me I wasn't going to be able to have kids, and in my mind I really wasn't taking it well, and so I decided to change my ideas and I head to the gym, where I talked a bit with the owner and I explained to him what the doctor just told me. It turns out, half my gym was on testosterone, and instead of paying a nurse to do the injections, he took me to the room in the back and he harpooned my right butt cheek with 300 milligrams of testosterone. It turns out 1 milliliter ampoules in Europe actually contain 1.25 milliliters. It also turns out I'm allergic to peanut oil, but that's a story for a different time. So this is a picture of me the evening I started HRT. For those who don't know, the point of hormonal replacement therapy is to replicate your normal hormonal production as much as possible. You want to have stable levels and not supraphysiological levels, which means you don't want to be outside of the normal range. 300 milligrams of sustanon every 2 weeks, in my opinion, is one of the worst possible protocols because you will have really high levels at first and then you crash, and you repeat this cycle every 3 weeks, so you're actually a human roller coaster. To have more stable levels, it's best to inject a much smaller amount once or twice a week. Also, sustanon, the product they gave me, isn't the best for HRT because it contains a blend of different esters. It's like mixing different alcohols. Sure, you're gonna get drunk, but you're also not going to feel very good. There's definitely gonna be some highs and then some lows. I didn't know that at the time, and I don't think my first endocrinologist actually knew what a half-life is. I went from never having any significant amount of testosterone into my body into injecting 300 milligrams at once. So what happened in the next few days after my first shot? Well, first of all, my voice cracked and dropped after 3 or 4 days. I basically still had the voice of a child before that, and people were often mistaking me for a woman based on my voice. Well, it only took a couple of days for my voice to completely change. I was answering the phone to my friends and they were like, "Who the hell are you? Where's Uranus? This must be the wrong Uranus." People would constantly ask me, what's wrong with me all the time? Luckily, I had just lost my job, so I didn't have to deal with that on top. In less than 1 month, my voice got way deeper. Not as deep as the voice you're hearing now. The voice you're hearing, I got after about a year of treatment. I went to a Christmas party 3 weeks after starting treatment, and I had to tell everyone that I had a cold. I really enjoyed getting a deeper voice because I was bullied a lot because of it before, but I don't think it was very healthy for my pre-pubertal vocal cords to be exposed to that much testosterone at once, because it absolutely does not replicate normal puberty. I don't know if it's a consequence of that high starting dose, but I can't sing anymore, and if I get angry watching a football game, I will lose my voice very quickly. Secondly, I finally discovered what a real erection was. It only took 26 years. The only problem was that I was erect for about 12 hours a day. During the day it was quite alright, but fuck me, at night I used to wake up with these really painful erections. I guess that's what happens when you've been hard for like 6 hours straight. I literally tried putting ice on my genitals in the middle of the night. Never do that, by the way, it doesn't help at all, it just hurts. But you know what? I loved every single second of those painful erections. I had never had a spontaneous erection in my life before. So those were the first two changes I noticed being on HRT. My voice dropped and my Johnson was facing north half of the day. Since my first endocrinologist came from a local hospital and told me I wouldn't be able to have kids, after 3 weeks I decided to get a second opinion. I went to this big public hospital with a big reputation and a huge endocrinology department. I don't really like those places and I will tell you exactly why. During an appointment, you spend 45 minutes with an assistant and then she goes to talk to the specialist. You never actually see the specialist, or perhaps for a brief amount of time on your first consultation. Now they put me on HCG monotherapy. I believe it was one injection of 1500 IUs every 4 or 5 days. If you don't know HCG, HCG mimics a natural hormone secreted by your pituitary gland and that commands your testicles to produce testosterone. So I was finally producing my own testosterone. The funny fact is HCG is actually extracted from the urine of pregnant women. So the urine of pregnant women got me through puberty, well, at least for the first 2 years. I never knew how important pee would be in my life. About the puberty part, let's look at some evolution pictures. So this is a picture of me 5 months before starting HRT. I had already lost a good amount of weight, probably around 15 kilograms, but as you can see, there's still a good amount left. I believe I might be a bit intoxicated on that picture, but it really doesn't matter. You can clearly see that I look way younger than 25 years old. This was taken on my first day of HRT. I still remember I was really scared, you know, I just injected something in my ass, which had never happened before. Nobody in my family or friends knew what I was going through and I didn't tell anyone I was consulting an endocrinologist. It wasn't until my mom found the HCG ampoules in the fridge that I had to tell her what the hell I was doing. I was really uncomfortable taking those pictures, but years later I'm really happy that I have it because it's my starting point. It was also one of the first times I stood in front of a mirror and actually looked at myself shirtless. This is 3 weeks in, you can clearly already see some signs of virilization going on. So that's when I switched from endocrinologist. From that one shot of Sustanon, I went on HCG monotherapy. As I said previously, HCG mimics LH. So my testicles were finally put to work for the first time and they grew a lot in the first months. I actually know now how it feels like to sit on your own balls. This is about 2 months in. Now, it's a bit embarrassing, but who cares anyway? That's about the time where I really started to develop a libido. My balls were full and I still remember very clearly going from liking to relieve myself from time to time to actually needing it. And that feeling of need I had for the first time in my life and I really loved it. I actually finally understood what other people felt. Also a bit embarrassing, but with the HCG I was finally not shooting blanks anymore. The 357 was finally loaded. This is about 5 months in. That's also when I started a new job, so at least I didn't have to explain the first 5 months to anybody because I would have been really awkward. Luckily, my voice had already dropped and I looked more manly because I didn't want to repeat the previous experiences that I had in my previous job where people didn't respect me because of the way I looked and I sounded. This is 6 months in. Here you can clearly see more virilization. I already looked like a completely different person. I was unrecognizable in 6 months. Even the bone structure from my face looks different and way more masculine, or perhaps that's also from the weight loss. That's also when people stopped recognizing me because I was changing so much and so quickly. Not only my face, I was working out 4 or 5 times a week and my body completely transformed. I was making my newbie gains. It's a bit sad and I won't go too deep into it right now, but that's also around that time where I started to realize how important physical appearance is in our society, especially at a younger age. I have seen both sides of the good looking scale. I have been that weird, overweight kid with the child voice everyone used to make fun of, and I have been that muscular, confident guy. And without even opening my mouth, the difference in respect I receive from other people, is staggering. Maybe it's also because I finally respect myself and you can see it in my body language too. Anyway, let's move on. So this is about a year later. This is 18 months after I started HRT with our buddy Scott Herman at a fitness expo in Germany. I bet he didn't know he had a 27-year-old next to him named Uranus and that he was going through puberty. I still didn't have a lot of facial hair back then. This is about 2.5 years in. I was finally starting to have some facial hairs and I finally discovered what it was to smell really like an animal. It's also around the same time where my iPhone stopped recognizing my face. Sometimes I would have the same problems as my iPhone when I was looking in a mirror and I had issues identifying myself because I had changed so much. This is 3 years in. Now I might have looked good, but I didn't always feel good, and I mean both physically and mentally. I never really felt good on that HCG monotherapy protocol, but back then I didn't know. When you've always felt like shit and you suddenly start to feel a bit better, you might think, okay, this is what normal feels like, this is what other people actually feel like. I was producing my own testosterone after all, thanks to the urine of the pregnant woman. But when I switched doctors again and I went back to testosterone injections but on a completely different protocol, everything changed for me. You can compare it with my headphones. For years I was listening to my music in the gym on an old Philips headphones with a 3-meter cable that almost cost me my life. I never realized how shitty my music actually sounded. It isn't until I acquired recently a decent pair of headphones that I realized, damn, this is what my music actually sounds like. Well, testosterone did the same thing for me. HCG monotherapy was a good start, but there were too many ups and downs. Also, I had lost all my trust in my endocrinologist in that big public hospital because of the following reasons. Number 1. I told them I was taking a whey protein shake after my workouts and they accused me of taking steroids. They didn't say it to my face, of course, but they put it in my medical file that would normally be sent to my GP. As I didn't have a GP, the file was sent to my home. It says in the report I got my hypogonadism through the use of exogenous supplements. All because I told them I was taking a protein shake, a whey protein shake from Optimum Nutrition after my workouts. Now you tell me guys, let me know in the comments, does this look like a kid who fucked up his endocrine system by the use of exogenous supplements? Does this look like a kid on steroids? If I had shown up there with the body I have now and with the arrogance of some YouTubers out there laughing their ass off because their libido is dead because they were on some stupid gear, I could understand, but I was just a sick kid in need of help. Reason number 2, every time I used to go for a checkup, they asked me to stop my treatment cold turkey 2 weeks before coming because they wanted to measure my base levels. They wanted to see if by any miracle my HPTA had recovered. The HPTA basically is the link between your brain and your testicles, and for me it has never worked. Also, the product that they gave me, HCG, is suppressive through negative feedback. It means that if a normal person takes the product, he will no longer naturally produce his own testosterone. Derek from moreplates.com can give us more insights on this. Also, starting and stopping my treatment all of the time stressed me the fuck out. I was finally on HRT and these doctors were consistently threatening me of cutting off my treatment. Number 3, they weren't good at managing estrogen. We men convert TRT into estrogen. It's essential for us. We need estrogen for healthy bones, for hair, for libido, and for a ton of other functions. But if your estrogen is out of balance, too high or too low, you can get side effects like acne, erectile dysfunction, depression, and so on. It's probably the most difficult part of all of HRT. Well, at that hospital, they just told me that estrogen is mostly relevant for women, and if I didn't ask it specifically, they would not put it into my blood work. I had estrogenic side effects like acne and pain in my nipples. HCG monotherapy can do that because there is more aromatase activity. I asked for an aromatase inhibitor and they refused and they prescribed me 20 milligrams of tamoxifen every day. Tamoxifen normally is a medication used for a completely different purpose. I had to stop that garbage after 3 weeks because I had the biggest acne breakout ever on my face, back, and on my shoulders, and I felt miserable. And on top of that, my Johnson no longer worked. Having doctors accusing me of taking steroids and not being treated properly sent me back into depression, and I lost a lot of time because before I actually acted and changed doctors. I had to see 5 or 6 specialists and spend thousands of euros until I found someone who actually knew what the hell she was doing. Currently, and for the past 3 years, I have been on the following protocol: 125 milligrams of testosterone enanthate every week, split into 2 different injections, 300 IUs of HCG per week and 1 IU of HGH every evening. I'm also on thyroid hormones. I believe it's 100 micrograms of T4 and 20 micrograms of T3 daily. If you want to have a good laugh, 1 ampoule of Test E in my country costs €30 for an ampoule. It took a while to get dialed in, but the new protocol made me feel so much better. Mentally, I had to deal with stuff you normally deal with in your teens. Like literally, I had to learn how to shave at 28 years old. I almost came the first time I looked at myself in front of the mirror and I saw tiny little hairs on my chin, you know? I also had to deal with the social anxiety I had developed for years. People didn't take me seriously anywhere I went. I mean, I couldn't even buy tobacco at 25 years old without getting my ID card checked. Unless I was drunk, I would always be thinking about what others were thinking of me, and I felt ashamed of myself, and I was scared of other people's judgment. I was sometimes even too shy to go to public bathrooms. I could never enjoy the present moment. I suffered from body dysmorphia. In my mind, I was this sick, fat, depressed and undesired boy. I can't even begin to describe the number of times in my life I got called fat, weird or stupid based on my looks, or also the number of times out of nowhere people were calling me a lesbian. You would be surprised at how mean people can be just because you don't look like everybody else. Just so you know, I have nothing against homosexuals, lesbians, circles, squares, whatever. Every human deserves the same respect. That's why fitness also played such a huge role in my transformation. I really built myself in the gym, both physically and mentally. And let me tell you, no one talks down to me anymore. And that's the same in my family and my friends. The body is one thing, but it took me a while before I transformed my mind too. My confidence used to be 0. Same thing with women. When I started dating, girls saw the man on the right, but in my mind I was still stuck being the boy on the left. There's only 3 years separating these 2 pictures, by the way. I had difficulties to accept myself, and it took me a while before I figured out who I was. I did many things to get out of my little comfort zone, and when I finally broke down that fear barrier, I could at last have some fun with myself. My social skills exploded. I suddenly realized women are extremely attractive creatures and way less intimidating than I once thought. I always saw myself as a shy, introvert person, but it turns out 5 years later, I'm not shy at all. I can't even think the same way. I started dating, going out more and more, talking to people. I finally got laid. This picture was taken at a wedding when I was 30 years old. Keep in mind here, I'm only showing you the good pictures. I had to learn from so many mistakes. All the stupid stuff you normally do in your teens, well, I actually did most of them in my late 20s. Maybe I'll make another video about that, but I don't think YouTube is ready. All my life I wanted to be like everybody else. I wanted to be average, but you know what? Normal, average was never going to be an option for me. What is normal anyway? If I had to summarize how it felt like going through puberty in my late 20s, I would say the following. It felt like I had these huge blinders on my eyes, and slowly, step by step, I finally removed them. I never told you what the actual cause of my pituitary problems are. So I did all the necessary genetic tests and they all came back negative. I did an MRI with a contrast product and the only feedback I got is that there is no tumor present, but the pituitary is a bit small. I did an echography of my testicles too. That was actually the only and the first experience I ever had with a man telling me to hold my penis while he was applying lubrication to my genital area. Anyway, everything came back normal and clear except for the fact that they were small at the time. I did a mammography too at some point, which confirmed that there is more tissue under my nipples than there should be. So now the actual cause. Years later, after starting treatment, I learned from one of my parents that there had been complications at birth. I was born at home and it was a complete mess. They had to break my collarbone because I was stuck with the cable, and apparently I lacked oxygen for quite some time, which might have caused some brain damage. I have 2 brothers and hormonally they're completely fine. Sometimes I regret not taking care of myself sooner because I would have actually enjoyed so much more out of life. I spent the better part of my teens and half of my 20s feeling like shit and surviving instead of living. So my advice to you, deal with your problems now. I was too scared to deal with my shit and it cost me 10 years of my life. Let me know what you thought of the video in the comments. Subscribe and stay tuned for part 3 where I will explain how opening the door of a gym actually saved my life. I will tell you how I went from this to this. If you want to see how my body transformed on HRT and fitness, be sure to watch that one. Thank you.